So I want to dive a little deeper into LGBTQ and addiction. I want to look at the intersection of the LGBTQ identity and addiction. This is a subject that's going to require both cultural sensitivity and clinical skill. So we're going to look at some addiction rates and some of the unique challenges that this population faces and some therapeutic strategies that are going to foster deep lasting recovery. Our goal here is to expand your understanding so we can better serve our clients and help them navigate that path toward wholeness. And the reality is really stark. A lot of members of the LGBTQ plus community are going to face disproportionately high rates of substance use and addiction. And this isn't just simply a matter of individual choice. It's rooted in societal stigma and rejection and a lack of safe, affirming spaces. So as clinicians, our job is not only to treat the addiction itself, but also address the cultural and psychological challenges that fuel it. Creating these culturally sensitive, safe spaces is the first step toward effective treatment. We have to actively affirm our clients' identities and use inclusive language that reflects their lived experiences. Intersectionality also matters. Being LGBTQ plus is only one part of the person's identity. And experiences of racism and poverty or disability are going to compound the trauma and the addiction risk. Research consistently is showing that LGBTQ plus individuals are more likely to engage in high-risk substance use. The rates of alcohol misuse and methamphetamine misuse and just other club drugs, these are particularly elevated. But unfortunately, the access to culturally competent treatment remains very limited, and that creates a significant treatment gap. So a lot of our LGBTQ plus clients are going to delay or avoid the treatment because they fear discrimination or past negative experiences in healthcare. And for some, that internalized stigma is going to become a major barrier. And the absence of family support, and in some cases, just outright rejection, is just going to add this other layer of complexity to the recovery process. So effective treatment for LGBTQ plus individuals is going to be built on trauma-informed care. Peer support is a big one from other people in the community. That is incredibly powerful in this community. And it's going to be vital that the recovery work allows clients to really integrate their sexual orientation and their gender identity into their healing rather than compartmentalizing or suppressing it. So a client I worked with, we're going to call him Marco, identified as a gay man in his mid-30s. He began drinking heavily as a teenager after being outed without his consent in high school. And his parents' reaction was really cold and distant, and he quickly learned to hide his emotions. So by the time that he entered treatment, alcohol had really been his primary coping tool for almost 2 decades. So in our work together, we uncovered that his drinking was not just about numbing the pain, it was about protecting himself from the deep shame that he carried from those early experiences of rejection. And once Marco began to see his drinking as a brilliant strategy that had helped him survive in the past, he could really start the process of replacing it with healthier tools for connection and self-expression. So over time, his self-compassion was growing, and so did his ability to stay sober without feeling like he was losing his only source of comfort. So this case really just illustrates how important it is to validate the role that addictive behaviors once played in the client's survival. So by helping Marco to reframe his drinking as a once brilliant survival strategy, we removed a layer of self-blame that had been blocking his recovery. And that gave him permission to see himself as not broken, but as resourceful, someone who had found a way to survive in the face of rejection. And from there, we could build healthier strategies together. And when we talk about integrating the fragmented self, we're really talking about helping clients reclaim parts of themselves that had been hidden or rejected or shamed. And that means validating their survival strategies. This is what I like to call brilliant strategies. Because these brilliant strategies may have saved them in the past, but now they're maladaptive. So our role is to guide them in dismantling those strategies with compassion and patience. So when we talk about brilliant strategies, this is just attachment theory, really. And attachment theory tells us that infants need at least one secure attachment to develop healthy emotional regulation, and abuse and neglect disrupt that process. And that's going to lead to mistrust and coping mechanisms that can become addictions later. So by reframing these as brilliant strategies, we acknowledge their life-saving purpose while working with the client to replace them with healthier patterns. And a lot of treatment models are going to focus on behavior, and that's helpful. But for chronic relapsers, deeper wounds are often going to exist. And these are going to include toxic shame, unresolved trauma, spiritual disconnection, and so on. And so the starting point for us is always the same. We're going to create a safe and non-judgmental space where the client can be fully present without fear. And I want to clarify the difference here between guilt and shame. They're very different experiences. Guilt says, I did something wrong, while shame is saying, I am wrong. And so for LGBTQ plus people, society, that stigma is going to plant a deep shame core from an early age. Traditional recovery tools like making amends, that helps to resolve the guilt, but often that leaves the toxic shame unaddressed. And so that's why a lot of our clients still struggle with behaviors that are rooted in shame, like sexual compulsivity and low self-esteem or depression, even after they make progress in sobriety. So Alice Miller said, the truth about our childhood is stored up in our body, and although we can repress it, we can never alter it. And her words remind us that our bodies keep the score. No matter how much we try to repress that childhood trauma, it eventually demands to be acknowledged. So for a lot of clients, substances have been the way they numb or manage this pain. Repression doesn't erase the effects. These symptoms are going to emerge later in life. And I like to remind my clients that what you resist will persist. If you don't address it, it's going to keep coming back and back and back. Addiction has been this client's maladaptive coping strategy for this unresolved trauma. And our work is to help them confront these truths safely without overwhelming them. Treating trauma is rarely a solo job. We need to partner with specialists, whether it's EMDR, somatic therapies, mindfulness, the list goes on. That's crucial. Too often, these connections happen later on in treatment, and that leaves very little time to build the safety that clients need before they return to their daily lives. So earlier collaboration is going to allow for a deeper, more sustainable healing. Now, we know that trauma manifests in many ways beyond just substance use. So there's eating disorders, chronic low self-esteem, a lack of life direction, and a repeated attraction to harmful relationships. These are all common patterns. So recognizing these symptoms are going to allow us to address the root cause, not just the outward behaviors. A lot of us I've seen have looked at these as the problem, but these are the symptoms of the root cause. So Don Miguel Ruiz and Don Ruiz said, it's time to come back from the world of illusion. Awareness is the key to coming back to life. So holding safe space is going to mean seeing clients as whole and perfect, even when they can't see it themselves. And that shift in perspective is going to be transformative. So instead of viewing symptoms as a proof of brokenness, we can just see them as survival strategies. But to hold this space authentically, we also have to do our own deep inner work. So the therapeutic relationship is going to thrive on authenticity. Brené Brown's work is going to teach us that vulnerability fosters connection. So as clinicians, we bring ourselves into the room. And so what I mean by that is, when I say bring ourselves into the room, I mean we allow the clients to see our humanity. So we share appropriate emotional responses, like saying, I feel really sad when I hear you say that. And that's going to help build trust, and it's going to deepen the alliance. Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it's going to direct your life, and you will call it fate. So these core false beliefs operate beneath the surface, and they shape our behavior and our choices. So when I'm working with clients, I'll often ask them, how can an unconscious belief drive our behavior? And I'll typically use the example of inviting someone over to dinner with their mom. And when they come in, my dog, my sweet, loving dog, comes into the kitchen and starts barking. And my sweet, loving dog is also a husky mix, so she's very vocal. She's not being aggressive, she's just saying hello. And when I invite you into my kitchen and the dog starts barking, you immediately jump up and you say, get your dog, get your dog, get your dog. And I say, are you afraid of dogs? Well, not really, but I just don't like dogs. Okay. And then I ask, well, were you attacked by a dog when you were younger? And you say, oh, no, I was never attacked by a dog. I just don't like dogs. And then your mom looks at you and goes, what? When you were 2, you were bit in the face by a dog. You don't remember that? So these repressed memories, these underlying beliefs about things can shape our behavior and our choices. We hear a lot of people talk about mommy issues and daddy issues, and they directly affect how we behave with people of the opposite sex or the same sex. And so a lot of these LGBTQ clients are carrying beliefs like, I'm not good enough, without realizing it. And by bringing these into awareness and reframing them, the clients can experience powerful, immediate breakthroughs in how they're seeing themselves. And that goes into self-parenting. And self-parenting is just going to allow clients to meet their own needs with compassion. So teaching them to reassure their inner child, using affirmations like, hey, you're safe now, or I'm here for you, or it's okay to feel that way. That's going to help dismantle those negative beliefs formed in childhood. So for LGBTQ plus clients, this can be especially healing, as it's restoring a sense of safety that may have been absent early on in their lives. Recovery often involves unlearning the false stories that we've been told about ourselves. Our true nature is love, but over time, we've been taught to see ourselves through the lens of shame and unworthiness. So healing is that process of dismantling those lies so we can remember who we really are. And ultimately, our ability to guide clients is going to depend on how deeply we've gone into our own healing. If we haven't done our own inner work, we're going to unconsciously limit theirs. So the invitation is to commit to our own growth, because when we go deeper, our clients can too.